here with Fontainebleau coach Chris Blocker. Coach, before we look forward, let's look back. Maybe your first rebuilding year. There was no playoffs and all that kind of stuff. I guess my one question about last year is, what did you learn to try to not have that happen again? Like, what did you learn about your team? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn?
Learned that, we need to try to avoid some injuries, that's for sure. Now, knowing that's not always the case, and you're going to have injuries, throughout the year at different positions. Just be a little bit more prepared for that scenario. Have that plan B for when those injuries occur and when that adversity takes place.
I guess part of those injuries was at quarterback. Dwayne got hurt, and then you ended up with Nick Ford back there, and it proved to be very successful, at times. But heading into this year, I remember talking to your offensive coordinator. He said we could see both. You could see Josh there or Dwayne. What's your plan? What would you like to see, if you could write it up heading into Jamboree and heading into that game one? Do you want a starter, or is it let's let them play it out the whole year?
Well, to be honest with you, I think the best scenario, and that's for any team, is to really have that guy pinpointed. The difference between Josh and Dwayne is that they both have something to offer. They bring in something to the table. And if it plays out in such a way that there just isn't any real big differences between the two, if there's not that great separation, we have a plan for that. So, whether it be a package plan or some semblance of a two-quarterback system, we've thought it through, and if that's the case, we'll do that. We'll do what's best for the team.
Before we talk about Iverson in the backfield, let's talk about the people up front that are going to have to open the holes and protect your quarterback, whoever it is. You start with Griffin Clements.
Right.
But talk to me about some of the people up front on the offensive line that you're going to be looking for in terms of starting positions and maybe some depth this year.
Well, most importantly, where it all begins, which is at center. And Braden Goodrow, who's been with our program the last 3 years, coming in as a senior this year, has earned the right to play this position. He's bulked up really well in the offseason. He's worked really, really hard on his skill set. And he's in fact, he looks really awesome, and I really don't expect that we'll skip a beat going into this year with him at center. Doug Shula is coming back his second year as a starter. He's going to be playing there at the tackles position. Isaac Gray is another starter coming back in. He'll be playing in at the guard position there with us. So being that that's the case, we're pretty excited about our offensive front.
Your biggest worry, is it your depth up front? If you had to say, this is what my concerns are in terms of your offensive line.
No, it's not. Christian Corcoran's a guy that kind of stands out in my mind, who's a quality individual that I suspect we'll see some playing time out of him. And we talk about starters at this time of the year, and it would be really good if we knew for sure that, hey, this is the guy, this is the one that's going to run through, a 15-week season there. Well, in our opinion, they're all still fighting for spots. And you take a guy like Christian Corcoran, he's going to be right there in the mix. And he's got every opportunity to become a starter himself. If not, he will contribute.
With young quarterbacks, well, you can't really say Dwayne's young anymore, but quarterbacks who don't have as much experience as maybe you want as a coaching staff, how important does that make, having an Iverson where worst comes to worst, we can give him the ball 22 times, and just having that workhorse. Before we talk about him, the player, how does having someone that successful make your offense maybe it comes on it doesn't have to come on as quick?
Well, correct. And with that experience that Iverson has from last season and doing the things that he did, it does give you a sense of confidence in what we can accomplish. And remember, now we have a number of these offensive linemen coming back this year, and with that experience, and with that experience again, and what we did in the running game last year, it breeds confidence.
I wanted to ask you this question when we did the feature story on Iverson, but you kind of brought it up in terms of having to account and have backup plans. Knock on wood, he's healthy for the whole year.
Sure.
But you can't just have one running back and be a successful high school football team.
Not at all.
Who else can see playing time back there? And is that where you could see a Dwayne Bernard at times?
Possibly Dwayne Bernard, yes. Carson Jones is a player on a team that saw a lot of action in JV games last year and looked really good. And Jaden Davenport is another guy that's back with us this year, and he has some skill sets where we'll be able to use him again there in the backfield and possibly at receiver and DB.
You don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but as a coach, having Davenport back and him wanting to come back, what does that show about the maturity? And maybe, he went through some growing pains, a part of just growing up. Sure. How does it show that he's starting to get it? He's starting to mature on and off the field.
Yes, and that's exactly what it is. We had quite a few talks about his return here with us with the program, and he sold. And going through spring with him this past season, it showed. And I'm continuing to enjoy the fact that he's growing and maturing as a young man.
Make you proud, not just as a coach of a football player, but as a teacher of a student?
No doubt. I'd like to see him finish it up. That's the true test right there. Go ahead and finish the season.
Wide receivers, you don't really hear about a lot of name wide receivers at Fontainebleau because y'all like to. With a running back like Iverson, you're not going to throw the ball a lot. But
maybe,
yeah, maybe. But who do you like at wide receiver this year on both sides?
Well, to be honest with you, we have two seniors there with that core in Brett Johnson and Dawson Nelson. A good bit of experience with those guys. Leadership is tremendous from those two. And that's why I say maybe. I think we're going to do our fair share of throwing this year as well. So having those two guys kind of lead that receiving core is ultimately key. And it's again, something that I've really enjoyed to see them kind of take over and lead the offense, especially with a young quarterback and still a young running back.
Flipping the ball to the other side of the ball, you've got a lot of talent, and it's like good players that nobody really talks about. Start up front for me on defense. You got the chance to kind of be special.
Well, and it's sort of the area that we're working on right now is a defensive front. We have Brandon Cloetry coming back, kind of leading that front core. With a couple of other guys that we're taking a look in at positions up front, at the two tackle spots there. Grayson Froberg is a guy that's been doing pretty well coming along up front for us. Backing them up at the linebackers position is another area where it's kind of 50-50. We have two linebackers returning and two guys that we're kind of taking a look at with the linebacking core. Christian Bobo and Grant Saison are two guys with that experience coming back, and again, we're looking at another one or two guys to come in and help with that core. Now, our experience, of course, is our backfield.
A player like Bobo, that just the off the field or just the follow my lead kind of thing. When you're having so many young faces and so many much unproven, how much is his leadership hopefully help you be a successful defense this year?
Well, it's all about that leadership. And someone like Christian Bobo, who has come a long way since his freshman year and growing in to not only a fabulous football player, but a tremendous leader, helps us out a ton. Colin Gagnon is a linebacker that's bidding for a spot up there with that crew and has done a fine job this past spring. And watching Christian just kind of take him under his wing and show him the ropes is second to none.
There's going to be a lot of high-profile offenses that like to throw the ball in 6-5A. You like what you have coming back in the secondary.
Well, I do. Experience is key.
That's got to be very important.
Yeah, experience is key. Marvin Lange is kind of the quarterback back there in the backfield with those guys, and have been playing together for quite a number of years now. Sonny Silvas, Traylon DeVille in the backfield there. A newcomer that's kind of fighting for a spot to break into that mix and just might do that is a guy by the name of Joe Morrow. So he's kind of a new face in the backfield, but it's kind of fitting into the mix with those guys.
What'd you learn about, last year was the first year of the new schedule, new opponents. What'd you learn about the Denhams of the world that may be going to help this year heading into the season?
Well, there's pretty stout competition, and having the schedule that we had last year, gave us a good look at whether or not we here at Fontainebleau can compete. And regardless, at the end of the season, when it was all said and done, looking at that record, I felt like we did a pretty good job of that. And I think our program has shown some maturity over the last 3 to 4 years now where we can handle that kind of competition week in and week out.
I know the answer to this question from a coaching staff. The answer is probably yes, in terms of not making the playoffs and how the season ended left a bitter taste in your mouth. From a player's perspective, when you just get the read on your team, do you feel like they're a little pissed off, and they want to come back and prove that last year was a fluke as opposed to the norm?
Yeah, I think they kind of feel a lot like their coaches do. Granted, we faced some adversity with injuries throughout the season,
but that's not an excuse.
And having a young
saying,
team, right? Never an excuse. They feel like that we still had opportunities that were missed. And going into this season, I think that's kind of their mantra, so to speak. This idea that they're not going to miss another opportunity to taste success.